Folks, welcome on back here. Another, not Monday now, but Tuesday, this Tuesday, September 3rd, my birthday. Great to have all of our students and members alike inside our live trading room. Got Chuck, Booker, John, Larry, Sam, got Tim, got Lynn and Randy, got Dave, got Gillis, got Lawrence, got Margaret, got a full house joining us here. Coming off of Labor Day, of course, I figure everyone's either returning back from their vacation or are already back and geared up, ready to go here this Tuesday morning, or Tuesday afternoon, rather, shortly after 12 o'clock. So great to have all of us here in mind. And Chuck asking out the gate, how old are you today? Heard a while back that you were 31 or 32, now 33. So 33 years, young, old, whatever you want to call it in between. I always say it's like another year where the light bulb in the back of your head just, well, supposedly turns just a little bit brighter, a little bit more year over year. So great to have all of us here inside our live trading room. I appreciate the well wishes from all of us. Of course, I'm not a great birthday guy as much, at least a little dinner. I'm seeing family later on this week. Shout out to Robin and Henry, perhaps. But otherwise, at social media here, social media streams at Cyber Trading U, popping up there on the lower left. So it'll be more of a casual day, at least for myself here, finishing up as soon as we finish up this workshop. Just probably hopping over to the gym shortly after that, and a little dinner afterwards, at least with a couple of friends. But with that in mind there, I do want to talk about NVIDIA here to begin. NVIDIA made a huge drop off this morning, but it's not even the drop that I want to go over today. It's more so where we left off about 7 days ago, 8 days ago, however you want to phrase it. Just in our previous workshop, in our previous Traders Talk workshop. Right now, we're dragging back down here, so hopefully it doesn't pull back too far here below the low here at this point. But, right now, long story short, no pun intended, I am in on a swing trade here on NVIDIA right now. I jumped in across the mid-morning with one of our students on a coaching call right off of essentially 110. And it's basically a swing trade. If it can make a good pop here going into the mid to late morning, early afternoon, I think that we could try and see if it can move up higher back above this area. But let's actually not get too far ahead of ourselves here. Let's actually recap what happened last week on NVIDIA with earnings and see how it played out altogether. Obviously, we know that NVIDIA kept dropping off after their earnings came out, but where were the support resistance that we were focused on? I'm not going to have you go back just to last week's Traders Talk or the video that's on our YouTube channel right there. Again, that's popping up on the lower left right now at Cyber Trading U. But otherwise, these are the exact levels. These are the exact levels to the T. Let me break it into a 5-minute chart here for you. But going into NVIDIA earnings just last week, we were previewing the earnings with these levels here. So it was already testing support. This web of support here, we were basically calling out 123.50 up to 125. So it's testing prior to their earnings coming out. And then, of course, we saw the pop and then the pullback. So off the initial pullback, I ended up jumping in on a swing trade. I ended up taking, well, first part of it was off of 118, but I averaged down. So my entry was a little bit above this lower purple line at like 116.70-ish or so. Good entry at the time. Things were working out at first early in the morning, but I'm looking for more. I thought it was going to play out better heading into the mid to late morning, and it didn't. So it pulled back here. I got out at like 118.50 or something like that, 118 and change. Like I got out with a decent little profit altogether, but I could have done better on it, right? I'm not trying to be perfect with the exit as much as I'm trying to at least be perfect with the entry. For students here like Sam, Kathleen, Brad, Ravina, I see here, Barbara, Grant, all of us here live. I admit everything, right? I'm always truthful with how I trade and what I do. I'm a better day trader than I am a swing trader. I'm a good swing trader at the levels, but there's more confirmation that you need to see play out with a swing trade. And old Josh here doesn't have as much patience. As old as I get, I still don't have as much patience comparing swing trading personality to a day trading personality. So where I always tell you, I'm always looking for a big move shortly after. I stick to those guns because that's my day trading brain speaking. So I was looking for a better move shortly after. I didn't get it here. I got out just with a little profit. It was what it was heading into the Labor Day weekend at that point, and that was Thursday. So it was Friday, then obviously today. So that brings us to today. That brings us to this morning. Point being, had a good entry on this at first off the earnings, but if it's not going to make that continued move that I'm looking for, that you're looking for, maybe it does over time, but if it's not going to make that big move shortly after, it's going to make a big move just the opposite direction. So Let's actually just switch this back into a 1-minute chart. This was even this morning where it's coming back down again, testing support, and over time. I mean, this is even before the open, at least. Like 5 minutes before the open, this was crashing already. So as soon as 9:30 hit, splat. Now, at this point, I don't have any levels on this chart, right? Don't have any levels on this graph going into the day today. It's not like this was really on the top of my mind. I mean, I wanted to go over NVIDIA as far as the recap from last week. I didn't really have any MO like in pre-market with trading NVIDIA. But as soon as I saw NVIDIA drop as fast as it did, it got me thinking like, okay, well, where can we find the next big support level? So I'm going to show you where that is, and I'm going to ask of you something in just a moment. But let me ask first for all of our students in chat, like Larry, Jeff, Grant, all of us here. Where are we more likely to find the iceberg levels for a stock like NVIDIA, at least? A stock like NVIDIA. I'm not talking cheap stock like 50-cent levels or whole numbers. I'm talking big brand stock, NVIDIA, a Tesla, a Microsoft, what name you. So Gillis says every dollar level, every $1. Very possible, right? That's very possible, right? You could say 110, 111, 112, 113, etc. But let's even start every $5, even wider, where we think about increments or levels. I teach this a lot more in the phase 2 stock course in terms of price and volatility. But think of it like US dollar bills, excluding the ever rare $2 bill. You got 1, then you got 5, then you got 10, etc. Those are where you find your more psychological levels. So it is possible, like every $1, you could see here, like really like 114, 113, 112, 111. That's not wrong. That's not incorrect. You do see orders of 100,000+ shares at each of these dollar levels. But where you think of where the darker red lines are from the market open, from pre-market here, what do we got? This was showing in pre-market at least. 90,000 on the bid at 110. Yeah, you got 107,000 here at 115. So that is your first big support level. Early in the morning, I'm on Twitter every now and then. I was chatting with just someone on Twitter. Guy's got like a lot of followers. He does his own stock stuff. Not going to pump his company out to you. He knows his stuff. I like him. We're chatting. And I was telling him, because he was calling out NVIDIA at 115 to his like people. I was like, oh, yeah, you got like 107,000 on the bid right there too. That could hold his support, guys. That very well could hold his support. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when it doesn't here after the market opens up? It's in the first 1 or 2 minutes. It smashes below it. It holds as resistance. It pulls back lower. This is all within the first 2-3 minutes. So where's your next support level? Is it every dollar? Or is it every $5? Should it be at 110? Is 110 the larger of the levels to work with? So that was my focal point going into, well, that'll actually cut me off there. I'll yank my own leash here because I was going to ask this question next from students like Ravi and Grant, and Margaret, Lee, Barbara, Jeff, and all of us here in chat right now. Let me get some other names here too. Not chatting behind the keyboard as much, but maybe like a Gary or a Dominic or an Alan T, or I got Bell joining us here, or Mosin joining us, or one of our trial members. Where are we more often time-wise? Where are we more often time-wise to find reversals within the stock market? Looking at the cyber clock, right? For Ravi here and, Alberto and Alan and Roger, where are we more often to find reversals within the stock market time-wise? Give or take, right? 10:30. So at this point in the morning, I have no interest. I have no business. This is way too far away from where the big level is at this point anyway. But as we draw closer, it's still pretty far. Fausto was short on this trade from 112.50. I don't know if he's still short on it or not. You'll have to kind of ask him coming up here if he's tuning in or if he's going to chat back to us later. But, he knows where support is here at this point. It broke below 112. He was cruising on a short. He was looking really good. And it went down to 110. It ended up breaking under and over, and I took my entry from there. So I even survived this little shakedown here at this point down to 109.50. But now at this stage, for my own trade, I was in on a trade with one of our students, Ian, on this. And, we got to make sure that this holds over this now support at 110. If this can't hold over 110, where's our next big level? Well, one can say like 109, 108, 107, maybe 105, maybe as low as 105. Let's look at the daily chart. It's a little bit easier now to kind of, poke at historical levels here. Now actually segue me quite perfectly to my main point of conversation today. I have something really cool to show you coming up. Stay tuned here. Got something really cool to show you on the S&P index, just this 80-year channel here that I ended up finding on on the long-term chart. But basically, at least to say here on NVIDIA, resistance flipped into support here. I don't think it's going to drop that far. I'm still bullish on the market overall. I would say otherwise, though, and this is where it bounced from practically. You could say it dipped down on this one little tiny candle, but otherwise it was basing out pretty good, just over or under 110. It was at 109.88 a low here, 109.66 a low here. Factoring in the close of this candle. Oh, this is actually a very big candle right here. Let me ask us here in the chat right now, and you two on social media, I want you to answer this. It shows it right in the data box. It shows in the very top of the data box right there. It's showing what's the date of this candle. The date of this candle, what do we got right there? It says it on the very top. You tell me, what's the date of this candle here that I'm highlighting? It's the red candle. This guy right here. May 31st, right? It's not just any one given day. That's actually the end of the month of May. That's the closing price of the May monthly candle. So that actually does have some historical significance to it. That's at what, 109.63? 109.63. So that adds a little oomph to this base here already. It bounced up obviously after. So you're looking for this to flip into a support over time. It really hasn't acted as that support yet. All right, well, how about now? It broke back above it here, heading back into mid-August a couple of weeks ago prior to their earnings. And now at this point, you're looking for this, resistance to potentially flip now into that rightful support. If it can't do that, then obviously you're looking for a much deeper, lower low. But for right now, I still feel pretty good about this trade. Actually, so much so. Look at this. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You can only follow it. Get that exact price 109.63 out there to you, right? That was that closing price I was just kind of hollering at you there, right? 109.63. Look how that based out today as the actual main support line, right? Obviously 110, and let me make this yellow. Being the perfectionist I try to be here with my charting. It's a matter of kind of looking at that as a yellow line for me because that's like a historical closing price level. I have that in the back of my head now. So yeah, really 110 here at this point, acting as support with 109.63. Needs to hold over that heading into the remainder of the day for myself. We'll see what happens. At least we're still making lower highs and need to obviously see a stronger reversal here coming up heading into the next hour if I'm looking for this to be a good trade. Great entry, but is it a good trade, right? If you lose money on it, no, right? More often than not, a losing trade isn't really a good trade unless if you take a small loss right away, at least, and it tanks. Here I had the chance to make a little money, but I was looking for more. If I don't get more out of this, that's fine. It's, not going to make me money, but at least it was a good entry. So, we'll see what happens here coming up in the next 30 or so minutes. Really quick here, just checking out the chat right now inside our live trading room. Chuck says May 31st is a significant date, his birthday. So obviously I was just saying today's my birthday, September 3rd. Shout out Robin and Henry. No, but Chuck, his birthday, May 31st. How about that? So it's even more significant there for Chuck. Chuck, are you a NVIDIA fan? Do you like NVIDIA? I hope he says yes, because that'll make it even better here for this trade. So, all right. So with that in mind, he says he loves it. There we go. So hopefully this holds for not just my sake, but Chuck's sake as well. Now, I got to show you something here. This is crazy. So, normally where we talk about historical levels and long-term charting and looking at the S&P and the Dow, the NASDAQ, what I'm about to show you here is going to blow your mind. So I know a lot of us here are swing traders to begin with and long-term investors. So you look at the Dow or the S&P long-term, or you have in the past. So that obviously we've been in a perennial bull market, regardless of recessions that have happened historically. COVID, 2008, obviously .com crash. Looking back at this long-term graph here, and actually, I'm going to just hide this right now. I'm spoiling what I'm trying to show you. How about that? I'm going to pop that back up in a second. But just really back from 1974, you could say we have pretty much been making higher lows, really up until 2008. And that was only for a few months at a time or a month at a time there. And it moved back up. and COVID again, obviously back, a few years ago and up since. So I think that we all know that we've gone up for a long time at this point. And you could even say prior to 1974, you can go back as far as like, the 1800s, I think, 1871 or so, something like that, something crazy. But even here, 1932, higher low afterwards, 1942. This is World War II time, right? Actually, if you remember inside our live trading room, Grant or Chuck or Margaret or Kathleen or Patrick, you remember this because we were talking about this in Traders Talk a few weeks ago, right? Didn't we have a cool little conversation about like, well, I mean, it's not so cool, but we were having an interesting conversation about at least comparing what happened during World War II to the thought of like, a recession and a crash. What happens if there were to be like a major breakout between like Israel and the Middle East and whatever. So not a cool conversation, mind you, but we're looking back at historical charting. But here, really since 1932, higher lows, higher highs the whole way through, right? So that's kind of easy to look at right there. But this is something that I found. For anyone here that's familiar with Fibonacci lines, you got, Fibonacci retracements, which are the ones that I think most people are like familiar with. I actually went over in class a Fibonacci extension line here and how to use that. Anyone here familiar with Fib channels? Is there anyone here that's familiar with what's called a Fibonacci channel? Some information here about World War II in our live trading room right now. Daryl saying nope. John saying yes. Okay, so I got one of us. But that's where I'll show you here back from, and this is where I'll try and base it out to you here pretty well if I keep this up. There we go. So what I did was I went all the way back to this, low here, back from 1942. Maybe I could have started here back from 1932. For any of my tech analysis or indicator purists out there, there's 1,000 ways to cut this pie. When you're using fib levels of any variety, there's 1,000 ways to cut the pie. The biggest thing, though, is that you want to have a significant bottom and a significant top. So what your definition of significant is and where you place that could be very well subjective. I just want to let everyone know that. So maybe I could have started here at this bottom. What I did was I started here. How a fib channel works goes as follows. You want to have one significant bottom, and then you want to find a second significant bottom. What I did was I kind of was looking at this higher low trend play out, right? Higher low, higher low, higher low. And then finally, we actually had a pretty decent crash here where technically, to a degree, it broke a couple of lows right there, right? So I'm using this as my second low. You got the first low, you got the second low, and then after that point, you connect the top portion. So you got low, low, and then the high point in between. So I'm going to show you obviously what happened after. You and I both know that the market moved up pretty much ever since, right? A couple of recessions in between. But for Daryl and Sam, and I want to get other people here, Chad and John, so like Leda and Tim and Andrew and Chris and Jason and Gillis and all of us here, I want to hear from them. What is your definition? I want to hear from everyone, from your words individually. How do you define a strong level? How do you define a strong level on the chart or, so name it? How do you define just a strong looking level? Sam says Fibonacci statistical variations off the mean, blah, 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 blah. Yep. Appreciate all of the additional chat, at least right there, but I'm going to kind of keep it simple for right now, just teaching just this for the meantime. But I want to hear from everyone, though, collectively, as far as where we find, or not where, how do we know that a level is strong? What's your definition of a strong level on the chart? Gillis says a major pivot. So the reaction off of it, Gillis, right? The reaction off it. He says a major pivot. So basically the reaction off of a price. I like that. Daryl says more than 3 touches. So Daryl, meaning that like if the stock is holding that price or touching it 3 times or more, you're calling that a strong level. Is that what you're kind of saying? I think that would be a good answer. A lot of ways to cut this pie here, right? Getting hungry. I'm flying back to New York in a few days. So I got my pizza in mind here, Pastaria there in Hicksville. Shout out, Rich. John says significant buyers or sellers at certain price levels. Very well, very well. Larry says some price that has a tough time breaking through. So similar to Daryl there. Richard asking price action. Sam saying a strong level is a level that provides good support or good resistance. Chuck saying a level where the chart bounces several times, either as resistance or support. Larry saying monthly pivots. Larry saying gonna have a birthday back here. All right, so all of those answers are correct. And actually, let me get anyone on social media right now just to chime in as well. Once again, at Cyber Trading You. If you're new to our streams or new to our YouTube right there, hit the follow or subscribe button. And we do this each and every Tuesday, each and every Monday, mind you, I should say. But with that there, to me, a strong level is simply a level where we see the stock having a tough time breaking over that price. And with that, afterwards, once it does break over that price now strongly acts counteractive. So resistance flipping into support, support flipping into resistance. So just because the stock is breaking over said level, that doesn't mean that it's weak, right? Especially if it was holding that level for not just a number of touches, but for quite a large portion of time, right? We're talking time here. So the more time goes on and the stock is holding a certain level, I call it stronger and stronger, right? You know, if it's only been holding as support or resistance for a cup of coffee, how are you going to call that strong, right? So that plays a big portion into my decision making. And then with that, the reaction, right? So it's not just the flipping of resistance to support, but it's the reaction off of said level. So I wanted to ask that question before I show you what happened here. Again, we know what happened in terms of direction. Anyone can tell you that the market moved up afterwards, right? Again, we know that there's been recessions. We know that there's been blah, blah, blah. But we all just answered what a big level is. We all answered what a strong chart level is, right? All of us are pretty much correct. And yeah, buyers and sellers will play a part in this too. But even outside of buyers and sellers, we're just talking about a chart level. So after this channel was made, this was about 32 years worth of price action, right? I'd say that's a lot of time. And, you know, typically a long channel like this should have some strong levels afterwards, right? Because this fib channel is meant to provide potential levels for the future. So once this dip point here is really created and we see a bounce, that's where we could begin to really show you what happened after this channel was made. So actually, I have this set here because I was making the thumbnail for the video here that you'll see on YouTube coming up. So give me a quick sec. I'm going to try and reset this right now. Let's see. With the defaults here. And there we go. Fill the background, extend this right. There we go. All right. So these are the actual fib levels that like are standard that come with like any retracement set or channel set here. So after this dip point, basically what happened? That's what we're asking. So we know that the market moved up, but basically to show you that we'll call this line first resistance. Generally speaking, it was holding under it. It wasn't testing it exactly here at this point, but it led to a strong breakout. It led to a strong reaction where it broke over this, bluish, greenish line here where my cursor is back in 1986. I still wasn't born there yet, but I have another 5 years until I was born then. But, ran off resistance nicely. All right, so for Larry and Daryl and Chuck and Kathleen and Charlene and all of us here in chat, when a stock breaks resistance and runs off of it, resistance should initially become what? Support, right? So, granted, did it shake under it for like a week or so? It did. Was it perfect? Not flawless. Did it get the job done shortly after, though? You betcha. Moved up after. So this line flipped, and there was a little slippage, but that's where we even look for that under and over move, right? When we're looking for support to get tested, we're not just looking for, the test of that price, and that's it. I mean, just like on NVDA, under and over, under and over. Same thing happened there on the SPY, or on the SPX rather, I should say. Just on the S&P. Now, this is where things get really crazy. This is where things get really crazy here. So obviously, you have this, peak. I don't know if this peak was really like in relation to this trend here, like so nicely. I could draw a separate little trend line off of these like highs, right? That's different. That's completely different from what I'm about to show you. That's how strong this fib channel is going to be here. Look how strong this top line was. It broke above it for a moment, but afterwards, look how clean this was. This was back in 89, 90, 91, up. Hey, there we go. I'm born. There we go. The week of September 2nd right there. There we go. There's old Josh right there. But still, it took a while for this to eventually break this line. It was holding this line for a long period of time, right? And then finally it smashed above it. Okay, well, hey, guess what became support at first? Back in 2002 in the dot-com crash initially, eventually broke lower in 2008, but that top line eventually based out as support, little move up after, and then we saw 2008 happen. So basically to say, point being, this fib channel has been playing out since, really 1974, but it was built from 1942. It's an 80-year trend line, 80-year channel, might I say. And that brings me to today. That brings me to the next, level here. So we already saw this break over this, next level here, the next fib level. It's more of an extension now at this point within the channel. But you could say it was already false breaking it here and then rejected, right? It was a strong rejection afterwards. It crashed going into 2008. Well, afterwards, given the time in between this test and this test here, which is about 20 years, I would expect resistance to hold. So it did. It did hold right there at this point. But look what's happening now. Obviously, we'd moved back up heading into the end of last year, into this year. And, it's crazy to see how strong this line is now holding, right? And that even brings me to today. That brings me to this very morning, coming off of Labor Day, going into the month of September, brand new week. Let's even flip this into an intraday, right? I got the ads there going. But you could see how strong this was at this point, right? But back in mid-July, ran all the way up and then rejected it. Not even a break. Not even a break. It went right up to it, sniffed it, right back down. That was it. And then now here basically is what you're seeing is a lower high being built. This is where I have to be a little careful about NVIDIA because it's tough to swim it's tough to swim upstream basically. So, kind of getting back to NVIDIA here, if we keep seeing more of a drop off within the SPY, the S&P, obviously NVIDIA is going to go with it, right? I got my stop set on this trade. I got my seatbelt on, but I was more optimistic that we would get a bounce and we would go from there, kind of taking us into the afternoon. Right now, looking at the S&P here, we haven't really broken a lower low. That's good, at least. Heading back into late August 22nd, probably about 2 weeks ago at this point, right? Kind of basing out right here. Doing a good job for right now. So as long as we could hold that, then perhaps we will get that bounce heading into the afternoon today, right? So, all right, so 12:33. Give me a quick sec here on the stick a little bit here this morning. Chuck saying, Josh, when you finish with NVIDIA discussion, please show the same long-term chart of GLD. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Chuck. Sec. Trading view is great for that. So, I'll just show GLD here just from the trading view chart. Just go long-term. It only gives me data, Chuck, back from 2005. Is that the case, or can you go back more? Is that the furthest you can go? Looks like for me, TradeStation 2005, I think, right? 2004, maybe. Maybe I can go back more. One moment, Chuck. I'll get this up for you here. No, looks like that's the furthest I could go back, right? Chuck, let me know. That's the furthest you can go back, like 2005-ish area, maybe like, end of 2004. That's basically this. So we'll use this as our example. Yeah, I like this because obviously you have a dip point here, a bottom. You have a second dip point here. And then in between, you have a top. So you could absolutely use this fib channel long-term, at least for like gold and GLD. Now, I'm just going to use it off like a average here between these bars because it's kind of a flat bottom. So I'm kind of just poking at the middle here and the bottom of it. So right there. And then we'll go this bottom. This top. Obviously, the prices I can make better just as far as the exact bottoms and tops penny-wise. But, this gives you a pretty good clue. So after this dip back in 2015, what happened? That's kind of what we're asking here within this fib channel. So, and really quick, might I say, keep in mind with day trading, we don't have enough time to plot all this stuff out. We're focused a lot more on support resistance based off of iceberg orders. The iceberg orders out there play a larger impact within day trading. They can help with swing trading, but we're going to be able to make better decisions with day trading by focusing in more on these iceberg orders than anything else. I don't have enough time to like set the fib levels up and do. So I'll use this more for long term. I'll use this more for swing trading, investing, long term portfolio based. But that's where I just want to mention that here. So basically, back from 2015, what happened? Well, it rode out this trend line pretty nicely to a degree, right? It eventually broke under it pretty nicely. It held it as resistance, and then it rebroke over here. So it's back within this channel again. Question is, are we going to get a real run? Because it started off pretty good heading back into the end of this past year, just like the market. Pretty much everything is melting upward, which is nice. But for right now, we're still kind of in the bottom of this fib channel here on GLD. So you would expect to see support that got broken through. Look at this red line, how that was support here. Then it broke as support. Support became resistance. Support became resistance. If there's a stronger push overall, then you would want to see this line flip from resistance into support before another run higher. But I don't know if we're going to get that. That looks pretty steep. That's a very steep run up, similar to what you had back, from early 2000s, we'll call it. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, if this can't flip into support, then watch out, because that would be your still resistance to work with there. All right, Chuck saying ETA created 2005. I remember well gold's rise in performance over the decades. Yeah, I mean, hey, I know you and Grant. I know George, one of our students, George A. I think he's more into silver than gold, but a number of us that are into the metals, right? Pretty safe bet historically, and with that, I'll just say that this is still a very healthy trade, but just be careful as far as that like fib channel goes. That's a great indicator to use long term. But as far as day trading goes, again, keep in mind, I can't like scream it from the mountaintops anymore because we always have new students here. So I don't need to like say it to Chuck or Grant or Barbara or Charlene or Alex Poe, any of our longtime students of CTU, which say, I gotta say it more to new students. Our primal focus here with day trading, this is icebergs. That's where I felt more confident with the 110 level to even begin. Right? If it wasn't for the near 1 million share buy order out here at 110, I wouldn't have felt confident about taking that bounce trade around that 1030 time slot. So, we're not always going to be perfect on the exit or take as much off the trade as we want. We'll leave money on the table at times. Maybe we don't take the trade at all and we should have. That's a separate story, but that does relate to confidence. Well, every trade to me begins with the entry, right? And every entry, you need to begin that with a big level. So if you're not confident with big levels, then you're likely not taking good entries more often than not. Sometimes I'm sure you will, but if you don't have confidence in the levels that you're looking at, then you're never going to get off on the right foot. So like even on NVIDIA, I can't stress this enough. It was a great entry that I had back from the earnings drop. It dipped all the way down here in the after hours and hit my level exactly. And I wanted more. Maybe I could have gotten it if I sold earlier, didn't, but so be it. I mean, better that than holding on. Seemed to be said here. I think that we'll get a bounce at first, but otherwise, I'd say if we don't continue to hold support, then I'm not going to hold on. There's no value. There's no upside. There's no benefit for me to hold on to this type of trade if we're not going to see the market hold up, if we're not going to see the market bounce up afterwards, right? So we tried here, didn't get it. Well, we're at our next level, so we'll see where it goes at this point. All right, so really quick here in the chat, Daryl says, right. Thomas saying, is that level 4 info with near 1 billion? Well, not billion, that's 1 million, but in terms of the dollar value, let's break out the old calculator for this one. Yeah, 991,000. So let's get the calculator out here. If you're on YouTube, you can obviously see my ugly mug here breaking out the math. 991,222 times $110 per share. That is $109 million. That is $109 million worth of stock. So, if our whole philosophy is to follow the big money, how big is big? That's what we need to answer, right? That's the question that we always need to answer. You hear me say it all the time, and I kind of compare myself to it. It's like I'm one of those like drawstring dolls, like one of those Woody dolls. You pull the string from the back of Woody. He says the same 4 or 5 catchphrases. That's me. No, but seriously though, I say that as my starting point. There's so much more to that, but one of the things that we need to determine is how big really is big, right? When we talk about a big level, how big is big? Well, level 4 really helps you out identifying that. Even from pre-market, again, we saw it early on at 115, then at 110. Obviously, like the thermo heat map here, you can kind of see the dark, bold red line here. That's your largest order. So over time, as a student here, obviously we keep saying the same name, so I'll mix it up again. We got Dale, we got Dave O, we got Randall S, we got Lawrence, we got Joe R, one of our longtime students from New York. We got a bunch of us joining us here today, this Tuesday afternoon. So, they know at this point as far as how big is, but any of our new students here, it'll take a little time. Take a little time for you to kind of adjust your eyes, realize like not every stock has the same type of liquidity. That's a whole separate conversation that we kind of save for our classes, phases 1 and 2, namely. So, question from Mosin here. Is that support for NVIDIA at 110 or if it can fall even further? Well, that's what I was just saying before. That's the whole conversation we just had for like, 25 minutes, right? So we're going to move on to other stocks, but at this point, I am long on this trade. I'm long on it from this level earlier. That was support. I'm personally looking for this to still be support. We'll see if it ends up acting as such going into the next, couple hours. But that's where I'm showing you my position right here, right? NVIDIA right there from 109.93 and a little bit underneath 110 actually, but more or less just I'm looking for a bounce from that area and we'll see what happens. That was support. It still is support until we see the markets flush down here coming up, or if NVIDIA itself smashes below like 109.50-ish. I would say it's still support here for the time being. All right. Daryl says that's a big order. No pulling that one. Yeah, I mean that's well, you know what? You'd be surprised. That's the thing. You'd be surprised. That actually could have been pulled. It wasn't. It wasn't pulled. It actually got filled. Broke under and over it. But orders can get pulled. Not as often that you'd see something like that get pulled, but you'd actually be surprised. It's happened in the past. Larry's saying, I'm hoping it's support for a couple of weeks. Certainly hope so, Larry. For my sake, I just want to get a strong reaction off of it. Much like a lot of us were saying in chat just before, what's the definition of a strong level? The pivot point, right? Like the reaction off the pivot, basically, right? So, started off good. Let's see a higher high in the next hour. That would make me feel a lot better about this level being supposedly strong, right? So you got to have confidence in taking the entry, but more or less, you can't predict the weather perfectly every single trade, right? We're not trying to predict the weather. We're just trying to, I don't even have a reference for it as much here, but basically is to say we're trying to get off to as much of a start as possible and then go from there, right? So in the end, if this breaks down here, I had a good entry to begin. That's what I focus on more than anything. A lot of times I'll go par, speaking in golf terms now again, but I'll go par on a hole. I'll go par on a bunch of holes in a row. If I'm ready 4 under, it doesn't really hurt my day, right? So maybe I wish I could be 8 under, but if I'm 4 under and I go par the next 4 or 5 holes, not the end of the world. All right, so really quick here. Brian saying SPY at the low of the day. Well, that doesn't help my trade out there, but NVIDIA is still holding up. Larry saying, Josh, if we're only as good as Weatherman, we may go broke. Yeah, I like that line. Gillis says he bought calls on NVIDIA when it was at 110 and 10 pennies, like a good entry that he had just before with the September 6th expiration. So just be careful, making sure, Gillis, on your options trade, it doesn't break lower at this point. I could have done options on this, but the volatility is higher. So especially for doing the September 6th calls right there, that's where if we're going to be wrong, you're going to be wrong faster than I'll be wrong, just because the volatility is a lot more, it's a lot higher, implied volatility, IV higher there. He says he has a stop loss. Perfect. That's all we ask for, right? For any trade out there, as long as we have our seatbelt on, I'm just making that known for any of our options traders out there that if you think the stock is volatile, how about the option, right? So, all right, let's go through a couple trades otherwise, because so far so good on NVIDIA. Hopefully it ends up with a happy ending there. But BOF, this was a trade that had a happy ending, but I stopped reading the book in halfway in between. If that's what you want to call it. So I was off to a great start on this trade too, but I should have just trusted the process a hell of a lot better, man. And Fausto too. Fausto was the first to say it, but again, we're not going to be perfect with targets and where a stock may end up possibly going. We're not trying to gamble and hold on for dear life. But in a point of reflection, I think that we easily should have trusted our own process a hell of a lot better. And I'm speaking for Fausto and myself here, both of us. I mean, we're steering this boat for you. So Fausto was very sketchy about it to begin with, and I was too, because started off okay from 250, had a clean re-break over 250. It was nipping 250 in the morning here after the market opened up a few times at first, and then it re-popped over 250. This leads to an entry, and I took this as my entry here at first. So, I'm happy I made money on this, but damn, I'll tell you, the more any stock goes up without you in it, become obviously a little frustrated. So, I ended up jumping in this trade right over 250. It was on the re-break here shortly after 935. As expecting. The more times it's testing it in a smaller concentration, we should get proverbial big move shortly after. And we started off good. We started off pretty damn good, actually, moving up to 275, 280. Things are good here. And then we're just stalling out. And, Fausto is kind of, a bit negative about the trade to begin with here. And, the more it's not making that continued push, there might be other trades out there running, right? I'm thinking like, oh shit, like if I waste my time on this and then it drops with me in it and I waste an unrealized profit where my P&L is already at zero, it's at nothing. I got to take some money and run. Well, what if for all the time I'm wasting here, there's another stock already moving without me? It's like I'm like stressing out on this trade. So I agree with Fausto. I say, you know what? The hell with it. I'm out. So I took some money and I ran here and I got out on the trade. It was at even at 272, 271 even here. It was like around this area, just shaking around. I felt good at first because it dropped, but then, man, this just kept going. This just kept going up. One more time, I'll ask students like Gillis, Brian, and all of us here otherwise in chat. Again, get some different names out here. Get Tony and get Guy and get Philip M. We actually got a couple of Phil M's or Philip M's in our chat. We get Elmer or DJ, or we got Roseanne with us here today, wishing her well, and David D, and all of us here right now otherwise. Again, one more time. What time do we expect stocks to reverse? Fall off in momentum, start going the other way. What time do we expect to see that happen? 10:30, right? Give or take, right? Give or take. So, obviously in a point of reflection, I could have and I should have held on to this trade in terms of time, right? I mean, this just kept going up. Even if I sold before 10 o'clock, I mean, that's a hell of a better profit than I ended up getting. I got like 23 cents on this trade, 22 cents, whatever the hell it was. I'm happy with it. I'm not going to really beat myself up too much over it, but I'm just showing you this because, I mean, as confident as I am with my own entries, I'm never going to be able to predict perfectly as far as where a stock will run towards. But you know what? I should have trusted the process that we teach you in class, right? Like just hold on a little bit longer. You got the time here. You jumped in right after 935. Beautiful. Jumped in over a 50-cent level here where that was allegedly resistance. Beautiful. But I took the money and ran because it's the day after Labor Day. I didn't want to start off washing out of a profit. It's not like I lost on this trade. It's not like I gave any back on this trade. I just didn't take enough off the table. That's all. So, obviously it hurts seeing it go up more and more and more the whole way up, obviously. That's where eventually, as much as it goes up here in hindsight, I ended up moving away from this stock psychologically. I kind of had this on the back end of my book map here. That's where I was kind of looking more for reversals around 1015, 1030. It hurts to miss out on a nice runner like that afterwards, but not the first, won't be the last. That's kind of the way that I look to brush it off as a trader. Been doing this with Fausto for nearly 10 years. Next month is technically 10. But, obviously at first, you don't really think that way. You don't really shrug it off as quickly, as easily. But then on the flip side of that, for as easily as I do that to begin with, the more any stock goes up, man, you get pissed off. Of course, you're like, I should have held on. What the hell? So I don't mind leaving 25 cents on the table. If this went up to 3 and stalled out from there, that's no problem because, we miss out on 25-cent moves all the time. I kind of think of it this way. For anyone here that wasn't thinking about shorting Palantir today, Why not? You missed out on such a big opportunity here. This was such easy money. You could have done this, right? Come on. Oh, well, hey, what about Coinbase? Oh, you could have shorted this. Why weren't you there for that, right? We're only watching so much with our two eyes, right? So you can't be there to take every trade is where I'm trying to get towards. And for anyone that has that like shoulda, coulda, woulda mindset all the time, this is easy for me to say and it's easy for anyone to listen to. It's actually very hard for anyone that actually goes through this to overcome it. It takes time, but you have to rid yourself from that psychology and from that mindset. You have to be as locked in on your strategy, the current strategy, as much as possible. So, again, even earlier, ASST, a little move here. So as much as I was dismissing BOF after a certain point, I was looking at other trades. Hey, what do we got here on ASST? And this led to a little move. I was able to get a little money on the first half, then second half break even, tanked after. It is what it is. But the more I'm worrying about what happened in the past, oh, I missed this move. Oh, I missed that move. Oh, I could have done this. You're getting nowhere in the present. You're kicking your tires in the mud. You know what I mean? So you do not want to think that way as a trader. It gets you nowhere. And the more that you end up taking losing trades and you get nowhere, you're actually going further back, right? You're actually losing money and you're losing confidence. So you want to go back. You want to go back and study, maybe what you could have done. Hey, like let's say like a stock like GDC, this thing popped. Like, study it afterwards. Like where were the actual levels? BOF. How could I have jumped back in on this trade as it kept moving up? Well, I know the answer to that question, generally speaking, looking for retests of resistance or the flipping of that resistance into support. That I already know that part. That as like, the experience I have with CTU, I have that dead set in my head at all times. The question is though, from where? The question is, what actual price could I have like tried to have jumped in from here? Was it 3? Was it 350? Right? Like these are things that I would go back on and review after the fact. That's where going back in the past will help you out. But kind of like thinking shoulda, coulda, woulda, like, oh, I could have made $1 here. Oh, I could have shorted that. Study the trade afterwards and see how you could have taken the trade. And that will help you going forward. Just like this, like, oh, we have a retest of resistance here, actually at $3.20, 320. So, nipped it at first. The more times it tests it in a smaller time frame, much like we always teach, expect to pop. That did flip into support. That was beautiful flip into support. I could have jumped into it from there. I guess that could have been a great point, right? It ran off at 320 up about 15, 17 cents, came back down and resistance flipped. It broke under and over, just like we always look for. That is that point of reflection that you want to kind of have and say, okay, how could I think of that for the next trade? But, where you kind of think of like shoulda, coulda, woulda as far as like beating yourself up does not take you far, my friends. Grant saying, or actually, I'm sorry, from the top here, Lynn and Randy saying, getting out at the 4 iceberg would have been good. Yeah, right? Like, again, in reflection, getting out, right? Thinking about getting out. Maybe if you're more focused on reversal time, you as in me. If I was more focused on reversal time, 10:30, then hell, I could have gotten out by 10 o'clock, right? I could have gotten out at 10 o'clock when it was at $3.20. I got out when it was basically right here. No, I'm sorry, 275 even. Sorry. It was like I was in the trade for only like 7 or 8 minutes. So I definitely should have trusted that process a lot better. That's for sure. All right. Grant saying that clock is very important, even if traders talk is only paper, even if TT is I'm confused by what you mean there, Grant. Cyberclock, even if it is, oh, you're saying like the mouse pad, you mean? Yeah, like the Cyberclock mouse pad. I mean, we even have that on our website, CT website, the clock, the mouse pad, etc. I don't have, I'm bad. I don't have my Cyberclock in front of me here, but I got it in my head. So, the more that you can kind of go throughout our classes with us and be with us here in Traders Talk each and every week, you have a better sense of knowing where that reversal time is. Again, to be fully whole perspective here, though, it goes to show where the instructors, Fausto and myself, as much as we do follow that process, we're not always going to be, Mr. Perfecto or Mrs. Perfecta if you're a lady here. But just to say, otherwise, you know what, you learn from it and you move on. The stock is still making higher lows right now and bouncing back up. Is there a chance for this to try and run later on today? Let's not worry about the past now at this point and beat ourselves up. Let's focus on where we could find a level maybe coming up for later on today, right? For some reason, this stock is still fighting. Let me ask Booker. Let me ask Joseph. Let me ask, again, Guy and Michael D. And, you got Phil and Kathleen and Wendy and Randall and a lot of us here. If I haven't shouted you out yet, going from top to bottom. We got Danny, got a bunch of us here, 120 of us here joining us live inside our live trading room. Where could we see a big level on this heat map, on this whole picture, on the whole monitor, the screen, whatever you want to call it? Where do we see a big volume level here on this page? There's going to be more than one answer, but I want you to tell me, like, right now, real time. Maybe I'll kind of make the picture look like this. Where do we see a big level right now? Gillis and Grant both saying 370. Yeah, this actually just popped up. Convenient, right? This just popped up, like a minute ago? Someone might be listening into me right now. What, you got a 50,000 share sell order out of thin air popping up? So, yeah, I mean, I guess this is resistance now. That's for sure. That's not exactly where I was even trying to go with you right there. So it's a great answer. All of us answering 370. That's a rightfully so big level. It's actually larger than the 35,000 shares up top here at 410, right? And that's an orange line that's been out there a good portion of the day, most of the day. So if this is big, then this is even larger. This is even, that much more significant at 370. Where else is there a big level though? So, I'm not trying to toss a curveball, and everyone here wrote a correct answer, but where else is there a big level? Not necessarily just at 410 or 370, but where else is there a big level? Oh, that's the crappy part of squeezing lemon into a water bottle here. I got the seed. Oh, oh man. All right. A bunch of us here in chat saying 330. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's correct. That is a big level. Actually, you know what? I want to give a shout out here. I think Kevin actually was saying it at first before I was re-asking. So Kevin wrote 340 just a moment ago, 340. And I'll tell you what, he is correct with where I was kind of hinting towards here, because it's not even on the whole heat map, but if you're looking across the whole page, the whole monitor here, etc., right here, right? See the CVP column? For all the volume traded today, there is a hell of a lot more traded off of 340 compared to any other price. So it broke over 340 earlier here, right here at 12:20-ish in the afternoon. It broke over it. Now, question is, can it hold over it as support? It's trying, because that's the larger of the two levels right now. For all of the built-up volume that got traded there throughout the day, that definitely is a lot stronger to me compared to the volume even at 370. Certainly compared to any volume at 350. I mean, there's more here than there is here. So, to me, I'm more inclined to think that 340 is the larger of the two levels here at this point. If it can't hold over 340, then this thing is done for. This thing's screwed. You got some larger down wicks here too. So if it wants to go, it needs to do it very soon. But otherwise, this is just like any other low float stock. This is just like any other low volume, low float stock where eventually big trees fall hard. So let's add 1 and 1 together and try and make 2 here out of it. The stock from last week was a 65-70 cent stock. Today it hit a high of $4.11. And that's where you say, how much is enough? If it's not going to hold over this point now as support, it breaks back under it because it's already doing a good job holding it as support. So, it's got to go from this point. It's been building higher lows. It's been doing good. It's been holding support where it should, but it's got to make a higher high. If this thing doesn't make a higher high, it's going to make a lower low. It's one or the other. That's it with day trading. I mean, that's it with any type of trading, but especially with day trading where you could have, a profit washed out like that, and then you could have a break-even trade turn into a huge loss. Here we go. Let's see. Let's check out here. We'll just stay on the horn here for another couple more minutes. Got to jump on to a coaching call, but then I'm going to split like a banana here on my birthday, so I'm going to finish up here pretty soon. But Let's just kind of take a look, see what happens here. Just had the support level break. I would expect for this thing to tank now. For as much volume as we had built up there, this stock tried to make a move at first. It, got 30 cents off the ground at first, but then it came back down. When it comes back down like this, that is a huge red flag. So I'm expecting for this thing to crap out now at this point. If it doesn't, that doesn't lead me to try and take this trade and jump in. It would actually need a lot more out of it to convince me that it would run back up. But if anything, it starts with 340, starts with this level. Broke under it right now is support. Support should flip into resistance and, pretty much go from there. All right. So, folks, we're going to wrap up here in just a bit. For all of us on YouTube, Facebook Live, social media, all of our social media streams and platforms universally at Cyber Trading U on the lower left right there. Be a friend, tell a friend that we got a YouTube channel here. Post videos pretty much every day of the week, or a YouTube short, a video, a live stream each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday, as long as we're not in the middle of a holiday. Right. But with that in mind, at least, folks, hey, we invite you to join us inside our live trading room. Scan that QR code with your phone, with your camera to join us just for a full week-long trial. Actually, especially with the holiday week, when you look to do that, give a call to our office, and one of our education advisors, they'll look to reset your trial so you don't lose that holiday day. Right. So you want to get the full 5 days. So actually, when you do that, call our office, schedule a time to speak with your education advisor, and they'll be able to reactivate the trial to begin on a certain day, just so you get the full-fledged week. But for Daryl and Thomas and Alan and any of our new trial members, new students collectively here, we hope that you're enjoying your time with us here. There's plenty more to come here, but we'll be back later on today at 2:30 Eastern inside our live trading room just for the afternoon meeting. We'll go from there. Rescan the market here collectively. I appreciate that, Grant and Lorraine and all of us here for the birthday wishes on top. Thank you so much. I'm not really a birthday diva, I guess you want to call it, so to say, a birthday bee, you want to call it. But I appreciate the love more than anything, right? So thank you so much for it, because it really made my day when I opened up the trading room. Like, I had a full fleet of students like, happy birthday, John. I was like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And again, we'll be back here later on today, 2:30 Eastern. Most in here asking as a trial member what else we could do during the trial days besides watching the videos. Simply put, just being here, being present, being active, absorbing as much as you can in the chat when we're on the audio in the morning and the afternoon. We don't expect everyone to be here all the time, every day. But especially as a trial member, you want to be active in our trading room, more as an observer, just kind of sitting back. Certainly, we don't want anyone trading our picks until they go through our classes, but just be more in the passenger seat of this car, basically, right? So the more that you are observing and absorbing the knowledge, tongue's getting tied now. Making me go long now, Mosin. No, I'm saying that just to say that the more that you're here, you're going to be able to have a better understanding, not only of our strategy, that's what we hope, but is this even for you or not? It's not for everybody. And if you're here at least for the full 5 days or most of it, you're going to have a much better idea, at least if this is for you or not, right? And that's what we want to start you off with. But otherwise, folks, we'll be back at least later on today, coming up at 2:30 Eastern. Take care.